To Grosse Pointe drug dog expenses from this fund, and we are not planning any capital purchases for the next fiscal year. That's all, just it. I'd like to thank all the staff. The staff's been a trying budget, just trying to do it remotely. I know I've accidentally emailed people on Saturdays and Sundays, not really realizing it was Saturdays and Sundays. Everybody has been very responsive and helpful, and patient when I was sick. So I do want to thank everybody for all their help.
Next, we open for public comment on the budget. Do we know, Pete, if we have any public here?
So under the rules, if you have a comment to make, please make it in 3 minutes or less. Provide your name and address, and indicate if you wish to make a comment by clicking the lower or raise your hand button on Zoom.
Is anyone else having a difficult time hearing?
I'm hearing something else altogether.
It almost sounded, yeah. One of our guests is participating in council meetings tonight, so we're just sharing the audio on their other Zoom meeting. That's all. I texted him to pay attention.
Oh, sure. Oh, okay. All right. Okay.
Good evening, everyone. Let's begin the city council meeting. It's the regular city council meeting for the city of Madison Heights on May 11th, 2020. The time is 7:30 p.m. Will the clerk please take the roll call?
Yes. Councilman Bliss,
I'm here.
Councilman Clark,
Here.
Councilman Corbett,
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Grafstein,
Here.
Councilor Rohrbach,
Here.
Councilman Soltis,
Here.
and Mayor Hartwell.
I'm here. Approval of the agenda. Are there any additions or deletions to tonight's agenda? Okay. To begin, we have several presentations. I'd ask that City Manager Melissa Marsh read through those presentations. Mrs. Marsh, could you begin with presentation 1?
Yes, this proclamation calls upon the citizens of Madison Heights and upon the patriotic, civic, and educational organizations to observe May the 10th through the 16th of 2020 as Police Officers Week, to commemorate police officers past and present who by their faithful and loyal devotion to their responsibilities have rendered a dedicated service to the community, and in doing so have established for themselves an enduring reputation for persevering rights and security for all citizens. Council is also requested to proclaim that May the 15th be observed as Police Officers Memorial Day in honor of those police officers who, through their courageous deeds, have lost their lives or have become disabled in the performance of their duty.
Thank you, Mrs. Marsh. How about presentation number 2?
This is a proclamation declaring the National Public Works Week to be May the 17th through the 23rd. The Department of Public Services Director Corey Almas has requested that Council approve a proclamation declaring the week of May 17th through the 23rd as National Public Works Week. This proclamation recognizes the hard work performed by the men and women of our Department of Public Services and the contributions these employees make every day to our health, safety, comfort, and our quality of life. This year's theme is the rhythm of public works. This theme challenges everyone to think about their communities as a symphony of essential services, working in concert to create a great place to live. Every community has a rhythm, a heartbeat that reflects its essence and tempo of life.
Thank you, Mrs. Marsh. And will you conclude with presentation number 3?
Yes, number 3 is the proclamation declaring Gun Violence Awareness Day to be June the 5th of 2020. Whereas every day, more than 100 Americans are killed by gun violence, and on average, there are more than 13,000 gun homicides every year. And whereas Americans are 25 times more likely to die by gun homicide than people in other high-income countries. Whereas in Michigan has 1,187 gun deaths every year with a rate of 11.8 deaths per 100,000 people. Michigan has the 30th highest rate of gun deaths in the US. And whereas protecting public safety in the communities they are serving is among the legislature's highest responsibilities. And whereas support for the Second Amendment rights of law-abiding citizens go hand in hand with keeping guns away from people who shouldn't have them. And whereas the pandemic facing America has drastically impacted communities and individuals sheltering in place, which may result in situations where access to firearms result in increased risk of imminent partner violent gun deaths, suicide by gun, and unintentional shootings. Whereas in January of 2013, Haida Pelton, a teenager who marched in the presidential inaugural parade, was tragically shot and killed weeks later, should now be celebrated her 23rd birthday. And whereas to help honor Haida and more than 100 Americans whose lives are cut short every day by the countless survivors who are injured by shootings every day, a national coalition of organizations has designated the first Friday in June, which is June the 5th, as the 6th National Gun Violence Awareness Day. Whereas by wearing orange on June the 5th, 2020, Americans will raise awareness by gun violence and honor the lives of gun violence victims and survivors. And whereas we renew our commitment to reduce gun violence and pledge to do all we can do to keep firearms out of the wrong hands and encourage responsible gun ownership to help keep our children safe. Now therefore be it resolved that the City Council of the City of Madison Heights declares the first Friday in June, which is June the 5th, to be National Gun Violence Awareness Day, and we encourage all of our citizens to support the community's efforts to prevent tragic effects of gun violence and honor the value of human life.
Great, thanks for that. Oh, I'm sorry. There's more?
There's not more.
Oh. All right, that concludes the presentations. Next on the agenda are public hearings. We have several public hearings tonight, and then after that, we'll do a meeting open to the public. So the first public hearing is agenda item A1. It's regarding the Brownfield plan. Mrs. Marsh, do you first have a report?
Yes, a public hearing is scheduled tonight for the consideration of a brownfield redevelopment plan for Cypress Partners as a financing request for reimbursement for eligible activities on the site located at 30021 to 30071 DeQuinder Road in the amount of $1,733,789 for a 9-year period. The applicant will invest a minimum of $12 million in private funds for the development of the site. On August the 12th of 2019, City Council approved a payment in lieu of taxes agreement with Cypress Partners to encourage development of a senior living opportunity at this site. The length of this pilot was approved at 16 to 40 years, depending on the financing obtained through MISHDA. Under this pilot, the city would have received approximately $145,000 in year one and $46,000 per year thereafter for the duration of this agreement. Under the brownfield, the city will receive $4,186 for 9 years and then approximately $190,000 per year each year thereafter. This results in the brownfield being monetarily advantageous to the city and other taxing jurisdictions. When comparing the estimated 40-year time frame of the brownfield, this will benefit the city approximately $4.4 million over the pilot and $17.7 million to all other taxing jurisdictions. This pilot agreement will replace the proposed brownfield agreement. The pilot agreement will be replaced by this brownfield agreement if approved, and will be considered by City Council as items A1A and A1B on tonight's agenda. Eligible activities included in this brownfield plan include the demolition of current buildings with removal of foundations, utilities, and fill, lead and asbestos removal, site improvements, including urban stormwater management system and site prep. A complete list of activities are included in the brownfield plan. A development agreement has been drafted and states the commitment and provided recourse to revoke the brownfield plan if the applicant fails to meet this performance standard. A copy of the brownfield plan is available for review in the Community and Economic Development Department at City Hall and was made public in the agenda packet online and can be made available electronically for those who wish to review. If council chooses to approve the brownfield plan, a motion is needed to adopt the resolution for a brownfield plan for the property located at 30021 to 30071 DeQuinder Road, and to authorize the mayor and city clerk to sign the development agreement and reimbursement agreement, and to authorize the city attorney to make minor modifications or corrections as needed.
Okay, thanks. Procedurally, I think this is not as complicated as it seems. Clerk, correct me if I'm wrong. We do a public hearing first to get public input on whether to do a brownfield plan or not. Then after a public hearing, then we can get to what council's wishes are. Is that the right procedure?
That is correct.
Okay, all right. So I will loudly hit the gavel so all in the land can hear. A public hearing is open right now for this specific issue regarding Cypress Partners to consider a brownfield plan at 321 to 371 DeQuinder Road. This is a public hearing for this specific issue. Would anyone from the public like to address the consideration of a brownfield plan? No one's asked to be recognized. All right, I'll close the public hearing. What's the wish of council regarding the consideration of the brownfield plan?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Mr. Corbett.
So I move that the council approve the, the proposed brownfield plan for 30021 to 30071 DeQuinder Road. Further authorize the mayor and the city clerk to sign on behalf of the community a development agreement and reimbursement agreement. Further, to authorize the city attorney to make minor modifications as required to effectuate.
Thank you, sir. Is there support for the motion?
Your Honor,
Mr. Bliss.
I support.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded to approve the brownfield plan for the address and the terms as stated. Is there any discussion from city council? All right, we'll vote by roll call vote. If you approve of the brownfield plan, your answer is yes or aye. If you oppose, your answer is no. Will the clerk please take the vote?
Councilman Bliss,
Yes.
Councilwoman Clark,
Yes.
Councilman Corbett,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Grafstein,
Yes.
Counselor Rohrbach,
Yes.
Councilman Soltis,
Yes.
Mayor Hurtwell.
I vote yes, and the motion passes. Now, this opens up a couple more matters for city council to consider. It would be agenda item A1A and A1B. Mrs. Marsh, do you have any additional comments, or can we just hear from council?
I just have the instructions for council. Since you just approved the brownfield, you have to repeal ordinance 2141, which established the original pilot for the same parcels.
Thank you, Mrs. Marsh. All right, so what's the wish of council regarding repealing ordinance 2142?
Mr. Mayor,
Oh, yes, sir.
I move that the council adopt a repealing of ordinance 2155, which involved the payment of taxes for Cypress Partnership at 3021 to 3071 DeQuinder.
Oh, okay, I see that. Is there support?
Your Honor. Mr. Mayor.
Ms. Grafstein?
Support.
Okay, thank you. The motion and seconded was to adopt ordinance number 2155, which repeals the old ordinance number 2142. Is there discussion from council? All right, we can take another roll call vote. If you support this item, your answer is yes or aye. If you oppose, the answer is no. Clerk, please take the vote.
Councilwoman Clark,
Yes.
Councilman Corbett,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Grafstein,
Yes.
Counselor Rohrbach,
Yes.
Councilman Soltis,
Yes.
Councilman Bliss,
Yes.
Mayor Hurtwell.
I vote yes, and the issue carries.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Mr. Attorney?
just point of information on the motion that just passed, that's first reading, so council will have a second reading on the repealing of the ordinance.
Thank you. Point well noted. What's the wish of city council regarding the other recommended action to rescind the municipal services agreement?
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Corbett?
move that the council rescind municipal services agreement with Cypress Partnerships related to a matter at 3021 to 3071 DeQuinder.
Thank you. Is there support?
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Mayor.
Mrs. Clark?
I'll support.
Okay, thank you. It's been moved and seconded to rescind the municipal services agreement as stated. Is there discussion from city council? All right, we'll vote. If you support this issue, your vote will be yes or aye. If you oppose, your answer is no. Will the clerk please take the vote?
Councilman Corbett,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Grafstein,
Yes.
Counselor Rohrbach,
Yes.
Councilman Soltis,
Yes.
Councilman Bliss,
Yes.
Councilwoman Clark,
Yes.
Mayor Hurtwell.
I vote yes, the matter carries. The next public hearing will be agenda item A2. It's the fiscal year 2021 budget resolution and levy. Mrs. Marsh, do you have a report?
Actually, I have a very short presentation, much shorter than what you have seen in the past. And I will screen share it if I can get it going. Bear with me one moment. Okay, I hope that's working. So tonight, City Council will be considering the proposed budget for fiscal year 2021 and a plan for 2022. According to the city charter, by the third Monday in May, council shall adopt a budget for the next fiscal year and set the tax levy for the summer taxes. Typically, tonight's proposed budget agenda item would have been preceded by a budget workshop with a review of the line item budget where council goes through line item by line item. However, due to the unpredictable and fluid challenges presented as a result of COVID-19, we have taken a new approach with the originally proposed general fund budget. Throughout this current COVID-19 crisis, our thoughts have been focused on two tracks. First and foremost, keeping the residents and employees safe. But second, to make sure the city's financial situation is proactive rather than reactive to the free fall that is taking place as a result of this crisis. Therefore, we started planning ahead and immediately froze all non-public safety vacant positions. We placed a hold on all non-essential expenditures and projects, and we furloughed or reduced hours for approximately 62 full-time and part-time non-public safety employees. If the proposed budget is adopted by council tonight, we plan to keep these hiring and purchasing holds in place until we have a clearer financial picture. At that time, we will be preparing a budget amendment to bring back to the budget in line with expectations. This year is the first year of a multi-year budget, which would be for fiscal year 2021 and 2022. Under this multi-year model, City Council is only adopting 1 year, fiscal year 2021. Fiscal year 2022 is being presented as a financial guide. This multi-year budget was part of the strategic plan and has many advantages, and it's the next logical step in our long-term financial planning to move the city forward toward a blueprint for the future. This strategic plan is updated annually by City Council and guides the city through operations and the budget process with 5 main areas of focus. 1, public safety. 2, infrastructure. 3, economic development. 4, quality of life. And 5, financial sustainability. In less than a month, we completed an overhaul of the budget process, reducing expenditures by almost $1 million and strategically using fund balance to supplement the budget to reduce the millage rate request. We are also taking a measured approach to identify areas to be adjusted in a mid-year budget amendment. On November 3rd of 2019, voters of the city approved Proposal MH, a charter millage resolution revision that rolled in several separate millages and increased the base charter millage to cover additional spending for public safety and quality of life services, such as parks and library. The increase was approved at 3.3684 mil increase. The fiscal year 2021 budget was originally created utilizing only a portion of this millage at a 2.5 mil increase, which addressed key issues discussed as part of the public discussions. However, given the current economic uncertainty with not only city finances, but finances of residents and businesses, the reduced budget presented for your consideration includes no increase in water and sewer rates, a stormwater rate that's only a pass-through, and an increase of 0.9763 tax mills, as detailed on this slide. For reference, in Madison Heights, 1 mil equates to approximately $856,000. The average home market value in Madison Heights is now $126,000, with a taxable value of $40,630 and an average tax bill of $1,067 for city services. The proposed tax levy would result in average city taxes increasing approximately $106 this year for the average home in Madison Heights. The majority of this increase is utilized for staff enhancements. The passing of Proposal MH promised an increase in staffing at the fire department of 3 firefighter EMT and in the police department of 2 patrol officers and 1 police service aide. This proposed budget includes a staffing increase to the fire department of those 3 firefighters and to the police department of the 1 police service aide. These 4 positions account for a total of $453,000 of the new millage. The 2 police officer positions are budgeted at a half a year and are going to be reviewed and considered once we have a better financial picture. Also budgeted at half of a year is the addition of 1 full-time outreach librarian hired to enhance library service programs and meet the residents' request for more programming and services. These 3 positions at a half year account for $163,000. However, as I stated, these positions will remain vacant until a minimum of January, when we have a better idea of our financial picture. As outlined in the strategic plan, public safety is a top priority for the city. In addition to staffing discussed on the previous slide, this budget also includes the addition of body cameras and replacement of police in-car cameras, 4 patrol cars, 1 of which is budgeted at a drug forfeiture, and the financing payments for a pumper truck and a police roof, both purchased and financed last year. The passing of Proposal H included a focus on updating and supplementing our current park amenities. However, with the reduced proposed budget, most planned projects have been deferred, with only the replacement of Edison Park play structure and improvements to Civic Center Park pavilions included this year. The budget also includes necessary matching funds for grants that we have applied for, including the purchase of planting trees. At no time is the library more important than in times of high unemployment and limited social activity. The Madison Heights Library sees approximately 90,000 visitors a year, with the majority of this attending programming and computer internet use. Although this reduced budget is scaled back, it still focuses towards building the library as an essential service in our community. This will be achieved with the proposed increase in material line items, digital services, public computers, including addition of laptops for patron use, a portable projector, charging stations, the creation of a maker space, and a new line item for programming that the library has not had in the past. As previously detailed in the staff enhancements, the budget also includes the addition of a full-time position. However, this position has only been included at a half a year, which will give staff time to permit if it's fiscally reasonable. The city has a budget policy to have a reserve of 2 months of operating expenditures or 16% of annual operating expenditures plus 1 year of debt payments to protect the city from financial uncertainties. Sometimes people call this the rainy day fund. Well, if these aren't rainy days, I don't know what is. So we are planning on tapping into these reserves in order to get us through the next 2 years. The funds are reserved. I got ahead of myself. These funds are reserved for economic downturns, liability settlements, grant matches, self-insurance, and cash for conducting financial transactions. Over the next few weeks and months, we should have a better idea of the revenue situation in the city. Based on what we currently know, we are estimating a budget revenue loss of approximately $980,000. That would be in addition to the budget that's presented for you tonight. Once we can estimate with more certainty, we'll be bringing a budget amendment to City Council to make additional budget cuts and utilize additional fund balance to balance the budget. We are still hopeful that we will receive some federal stimulus money to assist in what we have heard could be an 18-month financial low. However, in the current political climate, no one is certain these badly needed funds will trickle down to the local level. We have been advocating for direct local stimulus and have recently joined the National League of Cities campaign for a direct ask of funding from the federal government. If there are any questions, I would be happy to answer those now, or we can go back through the slides.
Thank you. I think first we should do the public hearing, right?
Yes.
All right, so before we get city council's input, I'll open the public hearing now. This is a public hearing on the 2021 budget resolution and the levy. Is there anyone from the public that would like to address the budget resolution? Okay, no one has asked to be recognized. So we'll close the public hearing for the budget resolution. Mrs. Marsh, what do you recommend as the next step?
It would take 5 members of council would need to approve the budget, the fiscal year 2021 budget, to appropriate funds and levy the property tax.
Okay, thank you. Then what's the wish of city council?
Mr. Mayor,
Mrs. Clark?
I would like to move that City Council approve this fiscal year 2021 budget resolution and levy.
Thank you. Is there support?
Mr. Mayor,
Mrs. Rohrbach?
support.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded to adopt the fiscal year 2021 budget resolution and tax levy. Is there
Mr. Mayor,
discussion from members of council?
actually more a point of order, and I would direct it probably to the attorney. The motion, I think, probably should have included the tax levy, the schedule of fees, and something else which is escaping me at the moment. Am I right, or?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
I think that's correct because there's a fee schedule attached as well. And as Ms. Marsh mentioned, under 7.6 of the charter, a vote of 5 members is needed to approve a budget appropriating funds and authorizing these levies and fees.
I think just simply checking with the maker and the second that they include the tax levy and the fee schedule, I think gets us on to whatever's next.
Is that okay, Mrs. Clark?
Sure, yes, yes.
Mrs. Burbach?
Of course.
Okay, I'll restate the motion. It's to adopt the fiscal year 2021 budget resolution and tax levy and the recommended fee schedule. Any discussion from members of council?
Your Honor,
Yes, Mr. Bliss.
I'm really appreciative of how hard staff worked in a very short amount of time to completely change everything in this budget. This was taken from utilizing the fully approved millage all the way down to utilizing about 25% of that. So there is an increase, and most of that increase is tied into positions that have already been filled that we can't get out of effectively. And so the staff did a great job of bringing down to the bare minimum, and then we're going to revisit this with budget amendments down the road. One thing that I will ask though of staff, they did such a great job compiling this, and I will vote to approve it. But as we go through this, these are definite uncertain times, and in uncertain times, the community needs to hear from us. They need to have that communication. So as we're identifying budget savings, as we're starting to hire those positions and look, as we're starting to make some of those decisions, love for us to be able to not just communicate that with the city in these council meetings, but I'd also like to put that out there in social media posts and really push that awareness as we're making those changes.
Thank you. Other comments from council?
Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Corbett?
Just to dovetail a little bit with what Councilman Bliss was saying, as the years have gone by, I've come to dislike symbolic actions by the council, or doing one thing knowing full good and well you may end up doing something else. These are very unusual times. I don't believe that this budget will get past December 1st, which is normally our date for budget amendments, without some radical restructuring. Certainly our finances are set going through the next fiscal year, but I don't think that, and we'll be talking about it again in a few minutes, but the real estate market for Madison Heights property values, the business community are going to look radically different, I would suspect, a year from now than they do today. That's a long way of saying that I think we've done our best with the budget. I think it's responsible. It meets our obligations under the charter. But I don't, to my colleagues and to the community as a whole, I don't have any belief that there will not be substantial changes. The budget is adopted and suggested by Ms. Marsh certainly moves forward on the commitments to public safety that have been incorporated both with the firemen now and the police officers, hopefully at mid-year. But anyway, it certainly is what we've got to do today. I think it's responsible, but I think that really the more substantive discussion on the budget will occur in a few months, maybe when we get a better idea of what we're facing overall in terms of the not only this year, but looking ahead to next year and what that's liable to look like. Because obviously you wouldn't want to spend all your money this year and then the problems for next year. So thank you very much, sir.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, Mr. Corbett's right. The ground is moving beneath us every day. And, even as we're hopeful that, we've flattened the curve of the coronavirus, and maybe we could see the economy open up in a month or so. It'll be much different on the budget ledger of municipalities in Michigan, because municipal finance is a completely broken joke in the state of Michigan. And so, you know, a lot of us remember the Great Recession a decade ago. It was my first term on council. And what Mr. Corbett mentioned is what cities are going to have to endure over the next couple of years is a dramatic decline in property values. And that's how we make our money. And also with our state legislature, which provides meager revenue sharing, we can't rely on the state of Michigan or the federal government. We rely on property taxes, and those are going to dramatically decline. So we're entering a period, an extended period, probably for several years. I don't know, maybe, I don't know if the full austerity measures that we did a decade ago, who knows? But definitely we'll learn to be more creative and nimble and flexible, and we'll be able to anticipate and read those economic indicators sooner because of our experience from a decade ago. But this is a very responsible budget, and I agree with Mr. Corbett. The council will be back in weeks and months to adjust things as the financial horrors divulge themselves. Other council comments?
Your Honor,
Yes, Mr. Soltis.
I'd like to ask City Manager Marsh, are you going to have other discussions dealing with like a worst case scenario or, you know, the crisis if I mean, they are talking about this second wave in the wintertime where, you know, the influx of infection rates skyrocket. So is that something that you'll be having discussions about, the possibility of those worst case scenarios?
It will be as we know more. So now it's just all a guess. It's one day at a time. This Friday, the state's having a revenue conference, so that'll be step one. And then, I mean, I was hoping to have an answer by maybe October, November. So hopefully by then we'll have a better understanding about the virus and what we can expect in the winter.
Right, because they were thinking that the second wave is sometime in December and January, correct?
That's what I've
their
heard.
prediction. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other council comments on the budget? All right, let's do a vote. We'll do a roll call vote. If you approve of the motion, which is the budget resolution, the tax levy, and the fee schedule, your answer is aye or yes. If you oppose, your answer is no. Clerk, will you please take the vote?
Mayor Pro Tem Grefstein,
Yes.
Councilor Rohrbach,
Yes.
Councilman Soltis,
Yes.
Councilman Bliss,
Yes.
Councilwoman Clark,
Yes.
Councilman Corbett,
Yes.
Mayor Hurtwell.
I vote yes. The motion carries. Next on our agenda is meeting open to the public. This is the opportunity for anyone to address City Council on any subject that you'd like. We typically limit comments to 3 minutes or less, so please be respectful of that. And please, it's sometimes burdensome to figure out who wants to speak on Zoom. So we need you to unmute yourself and identify yourself, and then wait for me to recognize you just in case there's a couple people that want to speak at first. Now, City Council, I'm going to use a little bit of executive privilege here. We had some special guests ask to speak tonight, and I'm going to give them the floor first. I believe there's some people from GS Ashley. We have the CEO, Josh Genderson, and he's asked to give a presentation to City Council. And instead of being formally on the agenda, I just asked him to speak during public comment. So it was my intention for him to speak at public comment. So as a courtesy, I'd give the floor to Josh, Mr. Genderson first. Josh, welcome back to Madison Heights. Would you like to speak?
Mayor Hartwell, it's David Leiter.
Oh, hey, David.
Hi, how are you? I just got a text from Josh. His internet just died. He's trying to call in on the phone. He'll be in a second. So maybe if there's another one that you'd want to do first, then Josh will jump on.
Yeah, we also got a message from the county executive's office. I don't know if County Executive David Coulter or Chief Deputy County Executive Hillary Chambers could join us tonight. Dave or Hillary, are you with us tonight? All right, that's 2 strikes. We'll just do general meeting open to the public until any of our special guests arrive. Would anyone like to address City Council on any subject? Please speak up now.
Yes. Hi, my name is Josh Genderson, and I apologize.
Oh, hi, Josh.
My internet went down.
Josh, don't worry. We just properly introduced you, and the floor is yours. Welcome back to Madison Heights, Josh. What's on your mind?
Thank you. It's nice to be here. First and foremost, thank you guys for giving me an opportunity to. I wanted to basically give you guys an update on Holistic Industries and our efforts at the bowling alley, as we call it, the site at 29600 Stevenson Highway. And, you know, I wanted to give an update on the site. I wanted to give an update on how we think the partnership can remain successful and where we are. And so, you know, just brief background on Holistic. We're the largest privately held cannabis company, vertically integrated cannabis company in the country. And we're growing really quickly. We are currently operational in 7 states, plus Washington, D.C. Have 350 employees, growing quickly as well. And most importantly, we have over 18 community partnerships. And, you know, when we entered Michigan, we really traversed the state looking for a place to plant our flag. And we came upon the city of Madison Heights. We quickly fell in love with it. And you know, it's diversity and its rich background and the idea of transforming a neglected piece of land into Holistic's sort of national flagship vertical location. And so we competed in the RFA and we're fortunate enough to win. So you know, we embarked on construction, on clearing the site. We plan to have at very least 75 jobs, all local with full benefits. You know, and as a company, we just really have a strong emphasis on local hiring and career development. So far, we've invested over $7 million in the project, with a planned additional $23 million into the site. In terms of progress, you know, we've made significant progress, and like I said, we were able to clear the site. And we were able to get rid of all the microbes and all the asbestos and things like that. And as we were ready to start construction, you know, COVID came and the pandemic hit, you know, our company and many companies pretty hard. But, you know, it's not changed our philosophy or our overall determination to be in Madison Heights and be there swiftly. We set to begin construction early May. We had the delay, and so at this point, you know, there are some supply chain uncertainties for things like building materials. There are, you know, some of the subs and different contractors and different workers, their availability has been impacted. We've found that there's limited city permit and inspection office availability. So, you know, adding to a little delay. And I think recently we heard that the city said the earliest that the offices will be back open are possibly on May 18th. And so, you know, when we think about how we want to partner with a community, and that's really what we want to do. We want to partner with the community. We want to create amazing products there. We want to bring jobs. You know, we like to make promises and keep them. So when Madison Heights determined that they wanted to consolidate cannabis activity into 2 locations versus having cannabis activity scattered throughout the community, you know, we met that request and found the site. And, you know, we're starting to recognize the changing dynamics in Michigan as it relates to cannabis. Adult use drives about 90% of all sales in any state that implements an adult use program. And medical-only businesses just can't survive in that environment. And we started as a medical business and are still focused on health and wellness across the country. But, you know, it's a tough reality that just exists. they're neighboring municipalities that have adult use cannabis, and that causes financial strain if you're relegated to be a medicinal only city. When looking at it holistically, a $30 million investment in a facility, and there's no bank lending, remember, in this space. And so a $30 million investment in this facility, when you take into account that there are communities around us that have adult use and we have not yet implemented that, it really starts to scare us, our model, and our ability to provide adequate returns on that investment. So I think what we're asking of the leadership in Madison Heights is for some clarity and to understand that adult use will be granted to the licensees, and that the city grants current Madison Heights licensees adult use provisioning centers and gives us some exclusivity for 36 months. We'll likely need an extension on our required certificate of occupancy date. But again, we are pushing as fast and as hard as possible to open as quickly as we can. This really, truly is going to be one of our greatest projects that we've ever embarked on. And we really believe it will be the best facility in not only Oakland County, but the state of Michigan. That's really what we came here to say, and just again, appreciate everybody's time listening.
Thank you, Mr. Genderson. The meeting is still open to the public. Would anyone else like to speak? Oh, Mike Bahara, you asked to be recognized. Mike, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of City Council. Hope everybody's doing well. I'll be lying if I said this is my first Zoom City Council meeting recently, but it seems like this is the new normal. I just wanted to chime in a little bit and kind of echo what Holistic and GS Ashley had said, kind of give you an update on where we're at the Ajax Drive site. We are just about done, we were just about done with demolition of the entire interior, which, as you can imagine, was quite the undertaking, especially given all it was kind of like a maze in there with all the locker rooms and showers and all the different places on the multiple floors. But we are just about done just before this pandemic hit, and now that we were able to get the construction guys back on site as of March 7th. So they're just about finished up, and I just emailed the city building department to clear up some issues with the building permit. But we anticipate that, assuming we can get our permits and assuming that we also don't have the same issues with some of the materials and trades that are all backed up now and have to finish projects that have kind of been put on hold for the last couple of months. But we anticipate working through that and being at least the retail side of it open probably in the next 90 days or so. But what I would say is very similar, again, to GS Ashley, is that right now there's a trend that the entire industry is kind of shifting towards adult use in Michigan. And that, the director of the MRA, Andrew Brisboe, has even come out publicly and said that folks in Michigan are not renewing their medical cards at a much faster rate than they even anticipated when they kind of tried to figure out how this would work. And one of the primary reasons for that is in Michigan, the excise tax is only 10%, which is a good amount, but compared to other states like California and some other states where it's still in the it's up to 30%, a lot of people were inclined to keep their medical cards and they wouldn't have to pay that excise tax. And so for 10%, a lot of people are just figuring, well, we're not going to renew it. We can just go to an adult use retailer. And given that we have now a couple sites and one even right on John R. down the street from us in Hazel Park that are adult use, Berkeley was about to begin accepting applications right before this. They put that on hold until until the stay-at-home order is lifted, but then they're going to resume. Royal Oak is coming with adult use. So we're going to have neighboring towns like really close, given Hazel Park, that have adult use. And to be quite frank, it's just going to be very, very difficult to see a return on an investment if we don't have adult use sooner than later. So again, I would echo GS Ashley in saying that, we really need some clarity on when you guys think you might be able to consider giving us adult use, and not only for that side of it, but also some ways that we configure the building and the layouts would be affected on that. I mean, you don't necessarily need a lobby or a waiting room. And then, if you have co-located licenses, equivalent license types, it changes kind of the design of some of the rooms and how we set the place up. So it would really be helpful if we could get some clarity on that from the city and all of you fine folks that are staring back at me here remotely. So with that, I'll give it back to you, and I appreciate everybody's time and making this work, these city council meetings work, given the current situation.
Okay, thank you for the comment. The meeting is still open to the public, so anyone can speak on any issue. Does anyone else want to address city council right now? Speak up, please. Unmute yourself, speak up. All right, I don't hear or see anyone. Last call, would anyone like to, someone's signing in right now. I have a feeling I know who it is. Hold with me. Okay, would anyone else like to address city council?
This is Mary Bush. Can you hear me?
Yes, Mary, welcome, and the floor is yours if you'd like to speak.
Thank you. I just want you to know how much I appreciate the city council and the city manager for making this Zoom technology available so that all the citizens can participate. I really appreciate it. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you for the input. Would anyone else like to address city council? Last call. Okay, thank you for those who spoke. We'll close meeting open to the public. We can continue on with the business of our meeting. The next agenda item will be reports. And this
I really appreciate it. That's all. Thank you.
Oh, Mary, I think you're still talking. Mute yourself if you could. Great. All right, the next agenda item is D1, reports from the city clerk. It's the temporary relocation of voting precinct 10. Mrs. Marsh, do you have a report?
Yes, Precinct 10 at Sidemans Elementary School is undergoing renovations until fall of 2020 and is currently not available as a polling location. City Council is being asked to consider authorizing the temporary relocation of this precinct to John Page Middle School for the August 4th primary election. John Page Middle School is ADA compliant, has ample parking, and is located within the boundaries of Precinct 10. Therefore, staff and I recommend City Council approve the temporary relocation of Precinct 10 from Sidemans Elementary School to John Page Middle School for the August 4th election.
Thank you. What's the wish of City Council?
Your Honor?
Yes, was that Mrs. Rohrbach? Please.
Yes, it is. I move that City Council approves the temporary relocation of Precinct 10 from Sidemans Elementary School to John Page Middle School for the August 4th election.
Thank you. Is there support?
Mr. Mayor,
Mrs. Clark?
I'll support.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded to approve the temporary relocation of voting precinct 10 from Simons to John Page Middle School. Is there discussion from City Council?
Your Honor.
Yes, Mr. Bliss.
Just a quick question for the clerk. Adding it to the active adult center, was that an option? And if so, why did we choose to go with the new precinct at Page versus adding it into the precincts already that vote at the active adult center?
It's my understanding that this precinct has been used in this location has been used in the past for relocations of Simons if that occurs. It's just temporary, and it was the closest to the Simons School, so it causes the least amount of inconvenience for the voters.
That's right. I do remember in the 90s, those old voting machines with the hole punch, kind of the big lever at Page Middle School. Other comments from City Council? All right, we can vote. If you approve of this matter, your vote will be aye or yes. If you oppose, your answer will be no. We'll do a roll call vote. Can the clerk please take the vote?
Counselor Rohrbach,
Yes.
Councilman Soltis,
I don't know where it came from. Because I was right here.
Dave, could you
Sorry.
unmute?
Yes. Thank you.
Councilman Bliss,
I vote yes.
Councilman Clark,
Yes.
Councilman Corbett,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Grafstein,
Yes.
Mayor Hurtwell.
I vote yes, and the motion carries. That'll bring us to agenda item G1, which is ordinance number 2156, vacant property registration and maintenance. It's the first reading. Mrs. Marsh, do you have a report?
Yes, presented for City Council consideration is a proposed ordinance 2156 to amend Chapter 6, Article 10, Sections 6-229 through 6-282 to require vacant properties to be registered with the city to protect the health, safety, and welfare of the citizens, to prevent blight, protecting property values, neighborhood integrity, to avoid the creation and maintenance of nuisances, and ensuring safe and sanitary maintenance of dwellings, commercial and industrial buildings by requiring vacant property registration and maintenance standards. Vacant residential and commercial properties would be required to register. Multi-tenant properties that have multiple units may not have to register if one or more of the units are occupied and all other applicable license and permits are obtained. A vacant property registration would be valid for 1 year. If a transfer of ownership occurs during the registration year, then the new owner must apply for new registration under their name. Many vacant properties are owned by persons that do not reside in the city of Madison Heights. This causes delays and issues with getting the properties into compliance when the owner is absent. This ordinance would also allow for the designation of a local responsible agent. Staff and I recommend that City Council approve on first reading ordinance 2156 to amend Chapter 6, Article 10, Sections 6-229 through 6-282 to require vacant properties to be registered with the city and schedule the second reading for the next regularly scheduled council meeting, which will be Tuesday, May the 26th.
Thank you. And what's the wish of City Council?
Your Honor,
Mr. Bliss.
I move that we adopt ordinance 2156 on first reading.
Is there support?
Your Honor.
Mrs. Grafstein.
Support.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded to adopt on first reading ordinance number 2156, the vacant property registration and maintenance. I'd like to speak first. As the chair of these meetings, I typically bite my tongue and allow the members of council and staff to go first, but I really, unlike a lot of other matters, I feel very strongly against this ordinance for many reasons. First of all, it's just not necessary. Our code has strong enough tools to go after the bad actors in our city. This is a step too far. This ordinance is going after vacant houses and defines them as houses that are unoccupied. And the first part of that definition, it says a house is vacant if it's unoccupied, full stop. So if it's unoccupied by a period of 30 days. So think about how many people in the city of Madison Heights have an unoccupied house for 30 days or more. All the people that travel to Florida for the winter. All the people who just died and their family are going through decedents estates. The probate court system can take 4 to 5 months to sort out. That would be an unoccupied house. Also, short-term rentals in our city. Guess what? We have Airbnbs in Madison Heights. Frequently, those are unoccupied for more than 30 days. And also, we're going into a pretty bad economy right now. So I don't think we need to be piling on fees for people who may be on the brink of bankruptcy. When we entered the Great Recession a decade ago, one of the first indicators was people abandoning their homes. This could be the final nail in the coffin of someone not coming back and fixing their house. They'll just completely walk away from it. Now, because of that, because we will punish the elderly retired folks who go down to Florida for 6 or 7 months out of the year, because we'll punish the grieving families who are in probate, decedents, estate cases, and we're punishing those business owners who do unoccupied Airbnbs, it just doesn't make sense. And it's just exceptionally galling that we would add fees and late fees and quite a complicated gauntlet of deadlines and timelines to get forms in and documents in. And then, if you're ever worried about government, it's not good that we're creating another list of people. And did you notice the proposed ordinance says remember, the bad people aren't going to do this, only the good people will do this. So the good people that agree to this vacant property designation, they agree that the city can enter their property every 30 days. I mean, that's the Fourth Amendment of the United States Constitution against unreasonable searches and seizures and the king's soldiers entering your house. I mean, for practical reasons, this doesn't make sense. For economic reasons, it's the worst timing ever. And we have other tools. If there is a specific problem, let's address it. But this is way too broad of a brush. And I sincerely insist that council just vote this down. Don't amend it and bring it back on second reading. Kill it, please, please. I've used all the breath I've saved up for quite some time. I'll shut up now. Any other comments from council?
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Corbett, please.
when did you break into my house and steal all my crib notes?
No,
I mean,
repeat them. They deserve reiteration.
Well, I wish I could say it as well as you did, but let's be clear, obviously, I've had a foot on both sides of this divide for 20 years. If I honestly believe that this would contribute to the elimination of blight, I'd say suck it up, real estate industry and homeowners and the rest of it. But the problem is, in my opinion, the best case scenario is that it has absolutely no effect whatsoever. The worst case scenario is that it would fall disproportionately on the seniors in our community, either by virtue of, as was mentioned, the travels during certain times of the year, during the death of a parent, and then there's any number of months it can take to clear up the estate. I just put a home on the market the other day, exact same scenario. If it was in Madison Heights, it would have fallen under the purview of this, and there really is no reason. The home is well taken care of. And as was said, if the people who are most likely to be causing the problems aren't going to comply anyway, look at what you're doing with this ordinance. You're basically trying to deal with a compliance issue by making another compliance requirement. And I don't want to come off wrong. It's a reasonable, I think at first blush, it's a reasonable attempt to deal with what is a problem in the community with the quality of homes. It's just one of those things that when you think about it, when you've lived through it, Mr. Hartwell's comment, we had a lot of homes that were vacant 12, 14, 15 years ago. 95% of those would not have been affected by this ordinance. First of all, who owned it was in dispute in terms of the foreclosures. Your large mortgage companies and lending institutions spent months and God knows billions of dollars trying to establish ownership. So you could have sent out all the letters you wanted, but there would have been nobody on the other end. Here again, the people who are most likely to be creating problems in the neighborhoods are the ones who aren't going to really give a damn about your ordinance, candidly. If there's an issue, then really we need to suck it up and go back and take a look at code enforcement again. If we've got issues, then maybe that needs to be buffed up again. Maybe we need to take another look at a more robust nuisance ordinance. Maybe we need more staff if that's really what it is. But I mean, I appreciate the effort. I think staff recognized the problem and went after it, brought it to council's attention. This particular mechanism, I don't think works. I'm telling you, as somebody who's lived with it for 40 years, generally 20 years in particular, this isn't going to do whatever it is you think it's going to do. Other than just drag people into the trick bag, who probably aren't the ones causing you trouble anyway. And like I said, seniors are the ones most likely to be falling all over themselves on this one. So I agree with the mayor. I would urge a no vote on this.
Yeah, I was thinking of my my uncle who spent a couple months in what do you call it? One of those physical therapy units where you don't live at your house, where you actually live at the hospital. The name of those facilities fails me, but technically, yeah, it was. He's back in his house, but for those 60 days, his house was unoccupied. So
Rehab or assisted
rehab, yeah. So technically, he would have had to register his unoccupied house as a vacant home, allowing the monthly inspection of the city workers, and had to pay a fee. And on top of that, late fees if he missed the thicket of deadlines, which I read the ordinance multiple times. I'm not sure if I would figure out how bad the punishment is if I was late. I'm sorry, I said I ran out of breath. I guess I found another one. Other comments from council?
Mr. Mayor.
Mrs. Clark, thank you.
First, I want to thank you and Mr. Corbett for bringing up some good points that I wouldn't have even thought about had you not brought them up. So I really appreciate that, and it definitely gives me a lot to think about. But how would this have affected the electroplating services incident had it already been in the law? How could it have prevented something like that from happening? My concern isn't necessarily in the residential vacant properties, but in all of the big warehouse business vacant properties that are all over the city, kind of put a black eye on the areas that we're trying to improve.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Just my first thought when you said that was it wouldn't have had any effect at all. We knew who he was. The identity of the owner of the scufflaw was well known. That wasn't the problem. Getting him into compliance was the problem. I'm sorry, Your Honor. That might have
The
been
building was occupied just
by
a criminal enterprise. But yeah, that's a great question, Mrs. Clark. If we can design a system or train our workers or rattle the cage of state workers better to prevent something like that. Now, for commercial and industrial, we have, I think, single-digit % vacancy. We're pretty proud of that in our city to have very low vacancy in our industrial. The thrust of this ordinance is probably more for the hundreds of vacant homes, but I think this needs to go into the shredder as soon as possible, and then we start a new day, happy and a team again, and start from scratch.
Guess what my biggest thing is, my husband and I, who have looked at different properties in the city to move into when we were interested in moving, a lot of the owners, like we said, don't live in the city and they're hard to get a hold of. So the property that's being, left neglected and not taken care of, you also can't get a hold of anybody to try and purchase it from them or rent it from them. Would this help to improve that issue, to give a point of contact that someone will have to be able to do something with that property?
Your Honor, if they registered, so if the person registered, we would have a point of contact to call if there was an issue, or when someone comes to the counter like yourself and inquires about that. But that again goes back to the point that the person has to come in and register.
It's similar to landlord licenses, or actually any business. Frankly, there's dozens and dozens and dozens of businesses that don't have a city license, or just as many. Actually, I think we found hundreds of unlicensed landlords. And honestly, we require cat licenses, and so we probably have single-digit % of cat owners who actually have a license. So I imagine the registration percentages in this field will be like de minimis. And like Mr. Corbett said, it'll fall squarely on the good men and women who are probably elderly and lower income, and they just want to follow the rules, but this will be a little too oppressive.
Your Honor?
Comments?
Your Honor?
Yes, Mr. Soltis, please.
Is there a way that we can get staff, Barry, the Economic Development director to speak upon why he created this? Maybe there's a different side of it.
Of course, yeah.
Is he on?
Yes. Good evening, council, mayor.
Your obnoxious weeds, welcome back.
To speak a little bit to what Councilman Soltis was asking about, part of this came up just because we were trying to think about different ways to kind of keep an eye on different properties that end up being abandoned. There are some that we tend to kind of know. Sometimes it's just, maybe a code enforcement officer knows them by memory or something of that nature. But oftentimes there's ones that will kind of fall through the cracks until they become a public safety issue, or we get a neighbor calling about, rodent infestation problem or something of that nature. So we were kind of trying to think of a way to be able to monitor and keep an eye on some of those. It's often the case with those properties that there's not necessarily a absentee landlord, but maybe an absentee property owner that is not keeping an eye on things. We don't always know who they are sometimes, or we don't really have much of a mechanism to ask them to register. So we end up having to do quite a search to find some of them. This was just a way to kind of put something in place. I do appreciate all the comments. I don't think it was certainly drafted with the intent of putting any kind of undue hardship on the senior citizens or anybody who maybe leaves town, to go on, to head south to Florida or whatever for the winter. It's really not what the intent is. And, depending how things go this evening, that can always be something that could be addressed within the language to make sure it's very clear that there's not a burden on people in that situation. Because that's really not what it was about. But it really was just trying to keep an eye on vacant properties. And as far as doing a search, it'd really be more of an exterior drive-by, not necessarily be able to go inside the person's property or in the structure or anything like that. It's not like getting a building permit or a landlord license. It's more just to make sure that the exterior of the building is safely secured. There's no broken windows, there's no issues with the roof, the doors aren't ajar or anything like that, just to make sure that we don't have anybody getting inside or any kind of pest or rodent infestation or anything like that. That was the original intent with coming up with something like this, but there are a lot of points well taken this evening.
Your Honor.
Yes, please, Ms. Grafstein.
So I completely agree that if someone is in Florida for the winter or in rehab for a couple of months, I don't think this is what this was intended to go after. And I don't think anyone would be comfortable with the city just coming into their house once a month. But I do think that maybe instead of having this ordinance, after listening to Mr. Hicks and what I thought the intent of this was, is offer as a service, either for free or for a nominal fee, that when people are going to be gone and they, in the case of someone passing away and the state has to take care of the house, letting the city know that this is a vacant house, and just so that the city knows to keep an eye on the house, which is what it sounds like the intent was. So if something doesn't seem right, if there is some kind of a water leak or there's some kind of something that people on the outside notice, that the city has a phone number. I don't believe that the city has phone numbers for everybody. So if the owner on record is out of the city and there is no phone number, then what is the mechanism to get in contact with them? I'm guessing you have to mail them a letter, wait for them to get back to you. Just if we could have some kind of something, just, and it would be voluntary, but just something to help people who have this. Someone could say, all right, we now have this empty house because whoever's going to Florida or the owner has passed away or they're in rehab or whatever the situation is. So perhaps instead of this ordinance, we set up some kind of a voluntary vacant home registry. It's a thought.
Other comments?
Your Honor.
Oh, I'm sorry, who spoke up?
Your Honor.
Oh, yes, Mr. Bliss, please.
So I agree with what Mayor Hartwell and Councilman Corbett said to kick this discussion off. And I think to add to that, if we have, all of us have the ordinance in front of us, all of us are reading through it, all of us have had a 15-minute discussion, and if it's still not clear what this ordinance is trying to solve, I think we need to send it back to staff. I think there are some goals here. Maybe it's to protect our public safety workers. The way that a firefighter would approach a vacant building is very different than the way a firefighter would approach one with people inside. And so maybe that awareness helps in public safety. Maybe it's a mechanism for us to be able to penalize, an additional mechanism in our code to be able to penalize property owners that are not taking care of vacant properties, or maybe, as Mayor Pro Tem Grafstein pointed out, maybe it's to be able to have that list. But I think if we have to spend 15 minutes debating something with the written ordinance in front of us, if we don't know what it's supposed to solve, then it doesn't do as good of a job as it needs to. So I will vote no, and I would just ask staff to go back to the drawing board and be very specific in a new ordinance that solves some of the problems that we think that this may be attempting to solve, and we can go at it from that avenue.
Other comments? Okay, we can do another roll call vote. If you support this ordinance on first reading, your vote will be yes or aye. If you oppose this ordinance, your answer will be no. Clerk, will you please take the vote?
Councilman Soltis,
No.
Councilman Bliss,
No.
Councilman Clark,
No.
Councilman Corbett,
No.
Mayor Pro Tem Grafstein,
No.
Councilor Rohrbach.
No.
And I also vote no.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Mayor Hartwell.
Motion carries.
Sorry.
That's so suspenseful. Thank you. I vote no, and the motion fails. Let's see. Next on the agenda will be minutes. What's the wish of council regarding the regular city council meeting minutes 4/27?
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Corbett?
Sir, I move that the council approve the regular meeting minutes of 4/27 as printed.
Thank you very much. Is there support?
Your Honor,
Mr. Soltis?
support, please.
Thank you, sir. It's been moved and seconded to adopt the minutes as printed from the regular meeting of 4/27/20. Is there discussion from council? All right, clerk, will you take the roll call vote? If you support the minutes, answer is yes or aye, oppose, it's no.
Councilman Bliss,
Yes.
Councilwoman Clark,
Yes, sorry.
Councilman Corbett,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Grafstein,
Yes.
Councilor Rohrbach,
Yes.
Councilman Soltis,
Yes.
Mayor Hartwell.
I vote yes, and the motion carries. There's no other business before council tonight, so before we adjourn, I'd invite any closing comments from members of city council and staff, and I'll go through the typical order as when we're physically gathered in chambers. And so we'll begin with Mr. Corbett, if you'd like.
Thank you, Your Honor. Just a quick remembrance of years gone by. I recall when you came on council, and a few years later, Mr. Gerald's came on council. It reminded me of two guys who had applied for a job in the Titanic 20 minutes after it hit the iceberg. And what that has to do is, I think, I hope that for our new members of council, the next couple of years are not what they might be as we move along. But I'm very concerned as we go along that we're going to need to be very quick to sharpen the pencils and make the necessary investments in the infrastructure and the redevelopment. They're going to try and keep and support the community. It's, I think, going to be a difficult period of time, but we've done it before. We'll do it again. And with quality leadership at the city, we'll be fine. That's all I have. Good luck. Everybody stay safe. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Mr. Bliss, please.
Yes, Your Honor. So I have a couple things tonight. The first is very easy request. Can we add the pledge and invocation back onto the agenda? I think that's important, particularly the Pledge of Allegiance at this time in our country. I understand why it was taken off as we shifted into Zoom, but I think we've got this down, maybe not to a science, but I think we've figured this out now. So I'd love to be able to get that up, maybe just putting a flag up on a slideshow like was presented today for the budget, maybe throw one of those up just so that way we can have the Pledge of Allegiance a little bit more resemblance of normal. I'm hopeful that in June we'll all be together in chambers, but I don't know if that's going to be the case. Things seem to shift and we don't have all the information. So at least next meeting and then moving forward, I'd love to be able to add those back onto the agenda. The second thing, a little bigger, budgeting is the absolute most important thing that we do on council. To those watching, it gives insights into our priorities as an administration, you know, as council and staff. You get to see where our priorities are. And in this year's budget, you see they're kind of threefold. The first is to keep taxes as low as possible. That's why only a quarter of the available approved millage is being utilized, because we want to keep those as low as possible for our residents who are all hurting right now. Second, we want to keep them safe. That's police, fire, EMS. And so the reason that there is an increase is because we have made investments in those areas. And that's going to be critical for us to deliver the services that are necessary, particularly in this time. And then the third is to keep our city solvent, to make sure that we are planning, that we have that long-term approach. That's why a lot of the discussion tonight was about discussion we're going to have later in the year and the continued updates that need to happen on that, because we need to make sure that if this gets as bad as the experts are saying that it could, that Madison Heights is in a good position to survive and potentially even thrive, and that way it lessens the dire straits that we could end up in, and other communities no doubt will. In the short term, I think we really succeeded. This budget is great work. I said that earlier, but I do think, as Councilman Corbett noted, in the long term, I think this is going to be a big struggle, both for the city as well as our citizens. They're expecting about 30% unemployment, which is no doubt going to hit our community very, very hard. I know we're talking a lot about property taxes, but I'm also really concerned about all of our residents who will be struggling and are struggling and will continue to struggle to be able to pay for those taxes. You know, that's how those housing markets, that's how that will drop, is if people start going into foreclosure and everything. And so to that point, I think first we need to make sure that, you know, we partner with the county treasurer's office and really try to get all of the information we can out to the public on how they can take advantage of these forbearance programs through their mortgages, and also make sure that it's publicly noted what we've already done in extending and kind of giving that grace period on taxes. I think that's critical right now, and I think it will continue to be critical as we go through this year. But I also think we need to get creative. We've done a great job of keeping expenses low. All of the expenses, we're keeping that as low as possible. We're keeping this budget low, but we also need to be creative in finding new ways to bring in revenue. And as was noted earlier in the public comments, the marijuana industry might be a way that we can do that. For a specific example on that, the Arts Board has obviously been unable to run any of our fundraisers for the mural that we announced in Rosie's Park. Murals are expensive. They're several $1,000s. And we had no way of raising that money like we did for the last one. We had to cancel several things that were in our plans. And GS Ashley Holistic stepped in. They donated $5,500 to allow us to still do the mural, which will be a bright spot in otherwise dark times. And so I'd like to be able to use that as kind of a model, and request that staff looks into a very opportunistic approach to marijuana. What would be an opportunistic phase 2 that could have an emphasis on jobs created, revenue to the city, which could include raising the amount of the percentage of profits that we are currently receiving. I believe that it's 1%. Somebody down the line can correct me if I'm wrong. But right now in our community engagement agreements, it's 1% of the profits go into this fund. An opportunistic approach may be to be able to raise that. I'd also like to see investments to the properties that increase taxable value. Now, I know that's going to be a little bit of work on our attorneys. It's not something we can turn around fast, but I do think if there is available revenue there, we owe it to our residents to take a look and make an informed decision on whether or not to move forward with it, because any dollar that we can get will matter in the coming days, weeks, and months. And if there is an opportunity there to be able to drive additional revenue for the city and increase our investments in parks, libraries, and definitely public safety, I think we have to take a look at it. So those are my two requests. The first, the easy one, let's add the pledge and invocation back to the agenda. The second, let's expand this budget conversation to see if there's an opportunistic approach to marijuana that might be able to increase the revenue that we'll have access to as we get into the tougher decisions on the budget in the coming months. That's it, Your Honor.
Thank you, sir. Mrs. Rohrbach?
Good evening. There's a couple things I want to say. One is about the June 5th being Gun Violence Prevention Day. I really appreciate the work that the Moms Demand Action do to promote that message. And I encourage everybody in council and anybody in the city who wants to participate to make sure you wear orange on that day, because it's a true sign of solidarity for those that have suffered gun violence and to prevent it in the future. Secondly, I've been thinking a lot lately, and I really appreciate the hard work that staff has done to be proactive in our budgeting and our, changing, turning on a dime to address the situation that we're in right now. And I really just want us to continue to keep our eyes on the future, making sure that we're making good financial decisions and really continuing to look forward so that we're ready when things come up. I know we're going to be seeing a lot of, or I'm hoping that we're going to see a lot of potential like federal assistance and things like that. And they often will look for things that are, the funding goes to the people that have something ready to ask for. So I'm hoping that we're really looking for opportunities, saying when those funds become available, that we are ready to jump in and say, we know what we want to do and we know how you can help right now. And then there's a lot of talk and working that people are doing right now to help us with sustainability in the city, and really appreciate that. And the Parks and Rec Board, before all of this, before when we applied as a board for the grant from council to for the some of the $10,000 savings that Councilman Bliss had identified. And one of the things we had discussed was creating and using some of the space in some of our parks for a community garden that can be used by anybody in the city. And we tabled it at the time, but I think it might be time for us to take that up again. And then I also just want to say thank you to the continued relentless work that the folks at the Madison Heights Emergency Pantry, which I believe now is called the Madison Heights Pantry and not just emergency, because it's going to continue even after this crisis is over. They are working so hard day in and day out, and I appreciate them so much. And especially, she might be on right now, I'm not sure, but I was thinking about Colleen Porter, who created this MSU versus U of M, these face masks that which her face masks are great. I've been using them constantly. And, but she did a competition to see who could get the most, which U of M or MSU mask got the most donations as their votes. And the University of Michigan won that competition. And they, so the person that, they got the most donations, but in total, that little competition, which was completely out of Colleen's mind, brought in $865 for the Madison Heights Pantry. And I think she is amazing, and I really appreciate her ingenuity. And I encourage us all to look for the inventors and the innovators in this time. And then finally, I mourn with a lot of the folks in the city about some of our quality of life issues that we have really kind of set our hearts on. We were really excited about being able to do some really amazing things. And I feel the disappointment with many of you. I'm disappointed about the cancellation of our summer programming and recreation programming in the city. And I just encourage everybody to, even though we can't be together necessarily and have these big programs, to get out there and take those walks. I just have to say, I love every day I see whole families walking down the street together, which is something I'd never seen before, and especially in this amount. So I just want to encourage everybody to stay strong, stay safe, and be safe and care for one another. And that is all.
Thank you. I'd invite our city attorney, Mr. Sherman. Do you have any comments?
Well, to Councilor Grafstein or Councilor Rohrbach's comment, I'd say go blue. Other than that, I don't have anything this evening, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next would be our city manager, Melissa Marsh.
I do have 3 quick things, and one I'm going to screen share because we're Facebook Live. And DTE announced this afternoon that they are planning a power outage on Monday, May the 18th at 9:30 for approximately 2 hours. It's the area that you see on the screen in red. DTE has notified all of the homeowners in this area, but I just wanted to show it in case someone accidentally didn't get the notification, especially since everyone is home or supposed to be home on Monday. So the second thing, we had a crowdfunding campaign, Stand for Small Business, and I wanted to thank everybody who donated for that. We only started this in the middle of last week, and we have already raised $10,000. We had secured $10,000 in matching funds, so we now have $20,000 to help our small businesses. We have had such success with this. We are planning on to continue the donations because, of course, the more money we raise, the more small businesses we can help. So the next step is to push small businesses to join in. And we had a lot of generous donors to that, as well as a lot of city employees who gave back to help the businesses in the city. And the third thing, you kind of heard me mention in the budget presentation, but I've been very vocal, trying every way I can to advocate the federal government for direct funding for local municipalities. So the state of Michigan, and all states actually, got billions of dollars of stimulus funds from the federal government, but that money is not finding its way to local municipality. So we have been partnering with the National League of Cities, that is nlc.org. They started a campaign this week called Cities Are Essential, and we are encouraging everyone. There's template letters out there, there's email forms, there's just, you can click on that you like and you support it to let your representatives know that you do. I have talked to most of the representatives in Michigan. I was on a press conference with Rosalind Grafstein, actually showed up to support me a couple of weeks ago with Andy Levin, and he is a big driver behind this as well. But we really need to get the message out. And so cities all across the country are pushing to this. It would be 2 years of stimulus money that could be used to fill revenue gaps because, as I hope most of our residents know, no government affects your life more directly than your local government. The federal government is not going to be there with fire services and police services and the everyday types of programs that the local municipality can provide. So if you would just go out to the website nlc.org, and they have a section called Cities Are Essential. That's it.
Thank you. Next, our city clerk, Ms. Rotman.
Yes, thank you. I'm just getting my little notes here. I just want to remind voters that anybody who is eligible to vote is eligible to be on our absentee voter permanent voter list. If you want to become a member of that list. You can either call our office, email us, send us a note. And by the end of the day tomorrow, we will also have an online form where you can request to become a permanent absentee voter. That will give you a application for every upcoming election. Once you fill that out and return it, you'll be eligible, and we will send you an absentee ballot for you to vote in the comfort of your home. Once you get your ballot, all you have to do is complete your ballot and complete the envelope that comes with your ballot and return it to City Hall either by mail or in the drop box. And that way you can avoid standing in line at the election. And I think that's really important for all our voters to know that this option is available to you. You do not need a reason to vote absentee. And if you have any questions, please feel free to call our office. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Grafstein.
Thank you. Just wanted to say that the $10,000 that was raised, this is something that prior to today, I was going to mention and ask everyone to support this. And our community came together, and as Mrs. Marsh said, it took less than a week for us to raise $10,000. And that speaks volumes to our community. We aren't the only city in the county that has this kind of a program, but we're the ones who did it. We got so far ahead. So thank you to everybody, the residents who contributed and the business owners who contributed, whether you put in $10 or $50 or $1,000 or whatever you did, it adds up and we appreciate it. And the fact that we were able to do this in such a short period of time just shows how much everybody here cares about our city. And it tells me that we really are going to get through this. You know, I've spent a lot of time over the last, as I'm sure everyone has, over the last 2 months, attending different webinars and teletown halls and Zoom meetings and brainstorming meetings, all talking about how businesses and governments and the economy and people are just going to get back to whatever normal is, recognizing that whatever normal is, it's not going to be the normal that we had before. It's going to be some kind of a new normal. And I don't know what that's going to look like. Nobody knows what that's going to look like, but there's a lot of factors that that are being looked at. And there's a lot of things that, you know, we don't know what's happening with the schools. The schools are off until the fall, but are they coming back in the fall? And we don't know. And there are a lot of employees who can't go back to work because they don't have childcare. I heard something like about 11% of childcare centers across the country are able to open. So what does that mean? You know, what does that mean for our residents? Is this a business opportunity to start a new childcare, or is this something that it's really going to hurt people? And I don't know. You know, and then we have people who don't want to go back to work, even though they can, because they're scared. They don't know what kind of environment they're walking into, and they would rather leave their jobs than walk into their business. So what does that mean? Is that a new job opportunity for them to find something else? Is it a job opportunity for someone else who wants to take that job? Again, I don't know, but there's so much going on, and we need to look at everything that's happening as an opportunity. There are going to be businesses that are going to shut down. They just are not going to be able to make it through. But there are businesses that are going to survive, and there are businesses that are going to thrive. And what we need to look at is, where are we going to be with this? And we need to help identify what are businesses that are surviving, what are businesses that just need that little bit of help from us, and then they're going to make it. You know, we want all the businesses here to be a vital part of the community, but the reality is they're not all going to make it. So we need to take a look and see what can we do to help them. And if businesses have to shut, how can we help the owners maybe set up some other kind of business? How can we help them change what they're doing? We need to look at the short-term goals, but we also need to look at what the long-term is. And long-term, we all need to be here. We all need to be doing what we do. And we need to help our residents. We need to help our citizens. We need to help our businesses. One of the things that was supposed to be happening in a couple of weeks was the Memorial Day parade. That is not happening now, But I was talking to the mayor pro tem in Hazel Park a few weeks ago, and she had said what they're doing is they're having their residents send in pictures of members of their family that they want to commemorate their memories, and the city is just making copies of those, and the residents are going to put them up in their front windows so that everybody can go by and see those. And I said to Mrs. Marsh, is there something we can do? Can we do something like that? Can we maybe turn them into a slideshow? And she said that yeah, that was something they could do. And then she also let us know that we are going to have some kind of a mini parade, so to speak, so that that we will be able to have some kind of commemoration for our residents and for the families of who had members who did die in the line of service. So just want to wish everyone healthy, stay safe, and we'll see you all back here in a couple of weeks. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Clark, please.
Yes, thanks. So first, I just want to talk a little bit about the Madison Heights Emergency Food Pantry, which is officially now the Madison Heights Food Pantry. The reason for that is because we're not just for emergencies anymore. The food pantry is aiming to be here to stay. We're neighbors helping neighbors, anyone in need, no questions asked. To give a little bit of insight on what they've been doing, they've managed to help over 4,000 neighbors in and around this community in less than 2 months. On March 13th, when the governor shut down the schools, the first question asked was, how are these kids who typically rely on food at schools going to have food when they're home? And of course, the schools pulled together for that, but knowing that there was going to need to be a bigger resource, Amanda Stein came up with the idea to create the emergency food pantry. Since then, dozens of volunteers have gotten together to build strong infrastructure. We are working on our 501c3 status right now. We've been in the news multiple times over the past couple months for all the good that we're doing. Amanda Stein was named one of the top 5 helpers in Michigan in the last article, and it was pretty exciting to see some of that good news get spread. Some of our largest families have up to 11 people in them. We've been serving people in the community who are in a transition house, they're completely homeless, or they're living in tents or garages. So they rely on this food to get by. We also feed pets. We fed 14 cats, 16 dogs. They would otherwise not get food and possibly go to the shelter because their families have been struggling so much. We also lost a family member to COVID-19. It was pretty hard on all of us. The pantry came together and gave some condolences and a card to the family, who greatly appreciated it, and greatly appreciate the efforts that the pantry puts through to make sure that they are served. It's just an amazing thing that our community has pulled together to do. There's no doubt in my mind that there's not a problem in this city that our community can't solve. So if there's any assistance needed in filling in any gaps, I'm sure there's a group out there that exists that's already working on trying to solve that problem. The last thing I want to touch base on today is I belong to a couple different groups on Facebook. One of them is called Michiganders Against Excessive Quarantine, and the other one is called Michiganders for Staying Home to Defeat COVID-19. I'm a part of both of those groups because I'm a part of both of those camps. While I do think we should be staying home, and I do agree with the governor that we're following a plan to keep everyone home and safe, as a small business owner, every single day is becoming excessively strenuous. And so I joined these groups hoping to gather with people who are also looking to problem solve this area, to help build a stronger infrastructure so that we have something strong to come back to when we get back. Unfortunately, in one of these groups is gained a lot of attention from local hate groups. There are a lot of bad messaging that's on it, and I just wanted to come out and condemn all of the hate speech and terrible messaging that's being spread, the threats that are coming to our governor. That's not the problem that everyone was trying to solve when they did it, and they don't seem to be administrating the page to remove those comments, which is in turn inciting more violence. So I wanted to condemn this hate and this violence and these actions that people are trying to take against our governor, especially coming into Thursday when we're we're seeing that we're going to be seeing some more action from these groups in Lansing on Thursday. So I wanted to be an elected official who came out to condemn the hate and the terrible language and the threats of assault on our governor. I am not a part of that camp. So I actually am getting together with some people who are also part of these groups to create another Facebook group that is specifically for coming up with ways to solve some of the issues that we're going to face once we come out of quarantine. So keep an eye on what I got going on Facebook, and you'll be able to join that group as soon as it's done. That's all I have for today. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Soltis, please.
Thank you, Your Honor. First of all, I want to thank the frontline staff, specifically our police and fire. I think they're doing a fantastic job, and our hearts go out to them, and we appreciate everything they do. I'd like to recognize Ascension Hospital here in Madison Heights and the whole staff over there. What a tremendous job that they're doing. They're quite the heroes. We couldn't do this without them. I want to throw out a quote or a stat that so far in America, United States, 91 nurses have died because of COVID-19 because they didn't have the proper protection equipment and infection control protocols. But then if you look at Canada, they have 0 so far. So I think that needs to be addressed. When this is all over with. The disparity there is just it's just unbelievable. On another note, Wednesday would be Older Michiganians Day, and that would have been, I think it would have been our 7th time going up to Lansing, and that was for the seniors taking them up. Last year we had 45 seniors, a big bus load, and the chief and I drove myself. Unfortunately, I understand they had to cancel that. It's disappointing, but hopefully next year we'll be able to go up there for that. And I did send a letter to the county government regarding the one nursing home that we have in Madison Heights, and I just was pleading and talking about making sure that the testing gets done sooner than later, and some of the infection control protocols to oversee that. And so then they sent back a nice reply, and I appreciate that. And they laid out this whole plan of attack. And so I'm glad they did that, and I appreciate that they're responding. But I also want to acknowledge that our fire department is going to be part of that planning to help perform tests at that nursing home. And so again, they go above and beyond the call of duty, and I don't know what we'd do without them. Their help is tremendous, and yeah, that's all, Your Honor. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, thanks for everyone's comments tonight. These are still frightening times, and I mean, just a reminder that the governor's order is that you must stay home unless you're going for those few enumerated purposes, that you're in a job that's necessary to sustain or protect life, or you're going to the grocery store or the pharmacy, or going out for physical activity or a hospital. In Madison Heights, we subscribe to the governor's order as the best policy for the health of our residents. So please stay home. Thank you to staff and city council for preparing and adopting the budget tonight. It was a very unusual year because we could not interact face to face. We did not host our typical extra budget meeting or two. But I really appreciate the strength of Melissa Marsh, her intelligence, and her ability to lead a team and to educate us and the public on the important priorities to protect the health and welfare of our residents. And this budget does it. And it also looks ahead at the financial fallout that we will undertake. I mean, it's got to be a form of PTSD that I suffer when I came onto council in 2007. was 2008, the first budget where it was an austerity budget. And so I still remember how difficult that time was because it seemed to surprise a lot of city planners. The Oakland County executive back then, his staff did not anticipate this. Who could really anticipate it? But this time we can anticipate it. And so this budget is prepared for some difficult decisions that we'll have to make. But it also, it doesn't just protect our budget and keep it balanced. It was also pretty thoughtful about the needs of our residents. And I really appreciate how the city manager did all she could do to limit the our millage. She kept it down. And also we're emphasizing the most critical services to survive. Police, fire, and to help you get training for a job if you got to come into the library. I mean, the most elemental parts of life. And of course, our DPS who deliver healthy water to your door and keep the roads safe. But truly, we are going back to our core message of we only exist to protect the health and welfare of our residents. And we're going to be in that mode for a while and have to be creative to balance the budget and the needs and demands of our residents. And this was a great first step. So thank you to staff, thank you to council. I appreciate everyone's opinion. There was no further business tonight. Oh, I have to congratulate Ling Yu. My wife, she got her second MBA over the weekend at University of Michigan, Ann Arbor, Ross School of Business. And it was a great ceremony. They did an online, U of M did an online ceremony on Zoom. And it was so touching. Ling Yu got to read the names of all her colleagues, and she read a poem that she wrote in English. And I'm just so proud of her. And that's all. Thanks for that privilege. Good night, everyone.